because we were in the ministry, there was a lot of shame connected to what I did. And when I did things, I did them big, and I always got caught. My sisters never did, but I always did. And in some way, I think that's a good thing, because I corrected those things.
Sure.
So I went through a lot of my teenage years with shame and feeling unworthy, not believing who I was. Tried to learn how to pretty up the pain, look good, you know, and took a lot of my value from what boys thought about me. So I learned how to do that really well.
And then you met him.
Then I met a boy who was not in high school. He was part of our youth group, actually, in church. And he was a lot older than I was. And my parents allowed us to go out, which was amazing.
You were how old?
I was 15 when I met him, and 16 when he took me out on my first date. So.
And that initial feeling of, again, being wanted and felt good, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it felt really good. He was older than I, he drove a car, he had his own house. You know, so it was almost like this was who I was. And I was being defined now by who I was with.
So now there are a lot of, you said you drove a car on his house, and so we have a lot of murmurs out there because now people are trying to put together, you know, how old is this guy? Mm-hmm. So you're 16 and he is?
21.
21. Okay. Takes you out, your parents know you guys are going out, you're seemingly having a good time, and again, if I'm reading you correctly, there's still the hurt, there's still the pain, you haven't dealt with anything. But this guy comes along and seemingly rescues you from this.
Yes.
And with that, then you're feeling more vulnerable toward him, that you can be protected by him, which means if we don't have our moral guards up, we're going to pretend we live in a married state, but we're not really married. Is that what was happening?
Yes, correct. And I kind of looked at him as my knight in shining armor.
Yeah.
You know, as a girl, you live in this fairy tale world that someday, you know, a prince is going to come in on his horse and rescue you. And really that prince should be the Lord, but it tends to be boys that don't even know who they are in Christ yet.
Wow.
So I took that and went with it and dated him for not very long. And after about 6 months of dating him, we entered into a sexual relationship outside of marriage. And, you know, I just kept justifying it in my head, like, oh, well, he's my knight in shining armor, and we're going to be married someday. And so, you know, Satan is really good at convincing you that sin is right.
Yeah. Yeah, that we hear it and we know it's wrong, but in my case, there's an excuse from it. I'm allowed it, or God will understand it.
Right.
And so you're involved sexually, and you became a statistic, if you will.
Yes. 6 months after we started dating, I became pregnant. And 2 weeks after I found out I was pregnant, I got married. My parents were very adamant that we get married quickly so that no one knew that the baby was illegitimate.
Okay, so now, again, walk us through, because I don't want to gloss over this, you're 16. Mm-hmm. You come home, you find out you're pregnant, and you did a pregnancy test, or found out you're pregnant. Leading up to that, you felt nauseous, and so it dawned on you, this I could be pregnant. Went home, took a test, it was confirmed. Walk us through the few moments right when you felt the weight of what has just happened.
I think it was when I knew I had to tell my mom. In my very immature way, when I found out I was pregnant, I was kind of glad in a way, which seems strange, but I felt like, well, now I can get married. Now I can leave this home where I felt controlled, and I could go to my own home. But what I really did was I went to another dad, because my husband became like my father. So it wasn't good. But the time when it really dawned on me was when I told my mom. I told her, and she just, that same shame just came, and the shame just came all over her, and she just shook her head. We weren't allowed to tell my dad for 3 days. My dad had just been told a couple days before that any stress could kill him. He had a very heart condition. And so I wasn't allowed to tell him, and neither was my boyfriend. And so my mother made us wait for 3 days, and then she told him. And our home was, I say it was like someone died in our home.
Wow.
Crying. No one talked to me hardly.